Everything that we're doing is to follow the wishes of the family and to follow the wishes of the community.
Tonight, Manitobans are sending their condolences for Grand Chief Cathy Merrick, who passed away last week.
Often what people really want is someone to really truly hear them. So listen to understand, not to fix, just to be there and be that listening ear.
Today is World Suicide Prevention Day.
That means children who have requests, urgent needs sometimes, their emails are not even being opened.
And the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society is back in front of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal with claims that thousands of Jordan's principal requests aren't being responded to. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The funeral arrangements and details of celebration of life events for the first woman Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs have been announced. Grand Chief Cathy Merrick passed away suddenly this past Friday. Both the provincial government and her organization have been working to honor Merrick for her lifelong advocacy for First Nations people. With more on those details, here's T.R. Wheatley.
Manitobans have already started to pay their respects for the late Grand Chief Cathy Merrick of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. They've come to the Legislative Building to sign this book of condolences for Merrick's family a day before she will lie in state on Wednesday afternoon, where people can come say their farewells. Amongst those here to offer condolences, Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham, Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand, and Premier Wab Kinew, who didn't speak inside the ledge but did at an unrelated event later on.
Well, everything that we're doing is to follow the wishes of the family and to follow the wishes of the community, Pimichigamak.
Since her sudden passing last Friday, there's been an outpouring of condolences online from across the country, from regular folks to police to Indigenous and Canadian politicians alike, including the Prime Minister. Many are remembering her as a fierce woman, strong advocate for First Nations people, and someone who gave the best cookum hugs. The public wake Wednesday evening at the RBC Convention Centre in downtown Winnipeg is set to run past midnight. Merrick is from the Pimichigamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. On Thursday, her family will take her home where they will have another wake service and traditional burial. Merrick was the first woman to ever hold the AMC Grand Chief title. She will be laid to rest at the Cross Lake Cemetery on Saturday after a final viewing and celebration of life where the Premier also plans to attend.
Assuming that all the arrangements come together, yes, I do plan to attend the funeral and interment in Pimichigamak.
There are also plans to have a candlelit vigil here outside the courthouse later this evening. Now, this location was chosen as Merrick had been addressing media here last Friday before she collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, where she later passed. At this time, her husband and children have asked for the privacy to mourn in private. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, T.R. Today, September 10th, is World Suicide Prevention Day. According to the Government of Canada, 12 people die by suicide every single day across the country. Indigenous youth have higher rates among the general Canadian population, but suicide is preventable with help, and those suffering with hopelessness need support. Here's Sav Jonesa with more on suicide prevention.
Suicide affects the ongoing lives of friends, families, and communities as they come to terms with the tragic loss of a loved one. Worse, it prevents a life from continuing, and seeing that with support, things do get better. The Centre for Suicide Prevention states that Indigenous people in Canada have some of the highest suicide rates in the world. For World Suicide Prevention Day, we spoke to two professionals working to prevent suicide on how we can support loved ones in need. Carla Cochran has worked in mental health, suicide prevention, and life promotion for the last 15 years. She says to check in on someone if you notice they're going through a hard time by asking 3 questions. Are you feeling down? Are you feeling depressed? And are you having thoughts of suicide?
If you're going through a difficult time and you go to a friend or a family member, oftentimes they'll say well, you're strong, or don't even think about that, or you could do better, or else they'll give advice really quick. But often what people really want is someone to really truly hear them. So listen to understand, not to fix, just to be there and be that listening ear.
She says mounting factors can lead someone to consider suicide, and sharing the mental load with them can help.
So if you imagine a cup, and sometimes it could be one event or it could be a series of events. If someone, say, lost their job, the cup fills up. If someone ended up getting into a fight with their friend, the cup fills up. Let's say someone didn't pass a course and then the cup overflows. I always say to a person for us is to help empty that cup, to do something that's positive and healthy to help make yourself feel better. So it's important to empty that cup, but it's also important to connect with people.
Francine Douglas works for Sacred Circle, an Indigenous health and wellness organization in BC. She says personal experiences and also our collective history as Indigenous people can play a role in our mental health.
Our world can get really small when we're hurting and when we're in pain. And the one thing I always think about is how we're never really alone, and especially in our hurt and our pain. As a people, collectively, we've been through too much.
She says talking about suicide can feel scary, but it's important.
People are always afraid, or they get nervous if there's somebody that's talking about suicide. But I always think that when people are reaching out for help, you know, there's nothing to be afraid of in reaching your hand back and giving them your hand and saying that it's okay. It's okay. The one thing I know I can do is sit here and be with you.
Douglas reaffirms that community and a sense of belonging can go a long way in feeling hopeful for the future. If you're dealing with suicidal ideation, Cochrane says to think about how you might feel in the future.
Are you going to feel this way in a week? Are you going to feel the same way next year? You know, if you think about 5 years down the road, are you going to feel this way? Sometimes when people go through a difficult time, it's like they're going through a tunnel. They have tunnel vision. They don't see anything positive or helpful on the outside. They just have that focus of what's going on at that moment.
If you need someone to talk to, please reach out to the National Suicide Crisis Helpline at 988. Sav Jones, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, Sav. BC RCMP is asking for the public's help in locating an Indigenous woman who's been missing for more than 2 months. 57-year-old Karen Tessier was last seen in Fort Nelson, BC on Tuesday, July 9th. 5 days later, her black Dodge Caravan was found in a rural area outside of Fort Nelson, and now RCMP Major Crimes has taken over the case. RCMP say they believe the public has information regarding her disappearance and have not come forward yet. Fort Nelson First Nation is also offering a $50,000 reward for information that leads to a significant development in the case that include her whereabouts. Karen Tessier is Indigenous, 5'5", 177 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. A dedicated tip line has been set up. You can call 1-250-561-8888. To Ottawa now, and the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society is back in front of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal this week. The Caring Society is taking the federal government to task for what it says is non-compliance with Jordan's Principle. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
We think is best served with going through.
Caring Society lawyer David Taylor laid out the organization's complaint against the government to adjudicators Sophie Marshallton and the panel members. The Caring Society says Indigenous Services has problems with how urgent requests are processed, timeliness of reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses incurred by families, and measurement of compliance with orders because there is no complaint mechanism. Caring Society Executive Director Cindy Blackstock adds there are tens of thousands of Jordan's Principle requests the department is not responding to.
That means children who have requests, urgent needs sometimes, are not, their emails are not even being opened, let alone determined by the department. And the number of that, by the department's own record, is about 40 to 80,000 cases across the country. The worst scenarios are in Ontario and in Manitoba.
Urgent individual requests are supposed to be processed within 12 hours and all other requests within 48 hours. The Caring Society also wants to expand the definition of what constitutes an urgent request to include, for example, expenses incurred during a state of emergency or to attend a family member's funeral. In previous hearings, the government says it has been overwhelmed by the high volume of requests since the orders came into effect in 2016, creating a serious backlog, but is an argument that Blackstock says she has little sympathy for.
Their job is to do complicated things. Governments, for example, they rolled out vaccines for thousands of people. They collect taxes from millions of Canadians. They do international types of work. All of those things are important. So is meeting the needs of First Nations kids. They've had now 8 years since the order.
The current set of tribunal hearings wraps up on Thursday. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
To BC now, where an agreement was just signed that will give a First Nation authority over their children, give authority to a First Nation over their children in the child welfare system. APTN's Tina House has that story.
At this celebration, Federal Minister of Indigenous Services Patty Hadju, along with other dignitaries, were welcomed into the Big House at the Stahelis First Nation to finally sign a long-awaited agreement between the federal and provincial government and the Stahelis First Nation. This gives them authority over their children who are with Children and Family Services. The main goal is to reunite those children with their culture, traditions, and families. For Tyra Point, who's on council, this is a moment that she's been waiting for a long time.
All of our children, all of our families have an inherent right to know who they are, where they come from, and what they belong to.
Grand Chief Willie Charlie says it's taken 4 years to negotiate this agreement, and he's excited for the future.
We know that the system used by the Ministry of Children and Families today doesn't really work for us. And so we've put our own law into force. Service delivery will be a reflection of our own law.
For Minister Hadju, she says that she is proud of this agreement, but says there's a lot of healing to do with past traumas.
I have to tell you that as a Minister of the Crown, especially in this particular portfolio, I feel deep shame for what this country has done to Indigenous people. I'm really grateful there are so many civil servants at all different levels who've worked on this and believe in reconciliation. And I hope that you'll continue to be an advocate no matter who's in government.
The agreement takes effect immediately. Tina House, APTN National News, Stahelis First Nation, BC.
Time for a quick break, but first a look at another story Tina is working on.
We're here in Port McNeill, BC on Vancouver Island, where the Numgees First Nation and Katerra have partnered to create a land-based fish farm. We'll have more on that story later this week on APTN National News.
Welcome back. The Selkirk First Nation in central Yukon is one step closer to owning an abandoned mine on its traditional territory. Last week, Yukon's Supreme Court approved its bid to purchase the mine's assets. Here's Sarah Connors with the details.
Selkirk First Nation is celebrating its successful bid to buy Minto Mine's assets, something it says will help prevent the mine from permanently closing. The mine's former owner, Minto Metals Corp., ran into financial difficulties when it was forced to abandon the copper gold mine last May for failing to pay royalties under territorial legislation. The mine is located on Selkirk First Nation's traditional territory. It was put into court-ordered receivership, which was unsuccessful in finding a new buyer. It's not clear how much Selkirk First Nation paid for the assets, It hopes that reopening the mine will create jobs, training opportunities, and business contracts for its citizens and the territory. It also plans to uphold best mining practices, including environmental integrity of the land, so future generations can preserve their cultural practices. We reached out to Selkirk First Nation for comment, but did not hear back by airtime. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Today in Winnipeg, a groundbreaking ceremony ushered in a future recovery centre for women, Two-Spirit people and their children. The Ann Oak Family Recovery Centre will bring addiction services for women, modeled after the existing Bruce Oak Recovery Centre for men. Equipped with a daycare, the centre will allow women and Two-Spirit people in recovery to stay with their families during their healing journey. The centre, located in the city's south end, is expected to cost $25 million. $12 million has already been raised. Sports commentator and father of Bruce Oak, Scott Oak, said they hope to begin construction as soon as possible. Premier Wab Kinew said the centre will meet a growing need for family-centred addiction services.
We can go anywhere in Manitoba right now. There's very visible signs of the addictions crisis in downtown Winnipeg, but we also know in neighborhoods like this one that the addictions crisis is lurking, in some cases unseen and in other cases very visibly. Whether you're in rural Manitoba, the north, addictions touches so many different walks of life, so many people from different levels of socioeconomic standing. And so that's why the work towards recovery, to extend a hand to help people get onto a positive path, is so important.
Anne was a great person, miss her all the time. I can't wait to see that centre move ahead. We want to hear what you think though, and here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to our website, that's aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Still to come tonight, a new graphic novel from an award-winning author. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Jesse snapped this photo of a monarch butterfly landing on a beautiful flower, which had been planted by his wife Shelby in their backyard. Quite the picture. Thanks for that, Jesse. The chance to be our next photo of the day. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sunny and 22 in Halifax, 20 in Fredericton. 8 with showers in Kuujjuaq, 10 in Nain. Sunny and 25 in Montreal, showers and 24 in Val-d'Or. Rain and 26 in Sault Ste. Marie, 24 with showers in North Bay. 26 in Thunder Bay, rain and 24 in Sioux Lookout. Sunny and 20 in God's Lake, sun's out and 22 for Norway House. 23 in showers in Winnipeg, rain and 22 in Dauphin. Cloudy and 26 in Regina, cloudy and 23 in Saskatoon. 17 with showers in Meadow Lake, 20 with rain in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 20 in High Level, 17 in Fort Chipewyan. Showers and 17 in Edmonton, rain and 21 in Lethbridge. 18 with showers in Vancouver and Kamloops. Cloudy and 19 in Prince George, showers and 19 in Smithers. 13 with rain in Old Crow, sun's out and 15 in Whitehorse. 15 in Yellowknife, 16 in Norman Wells. +1 in Sax Harbor, cloudy and 7 in Paulatuck. 10 in Chesterfield, 9 in Whale Cove. 3 with snow in Resolute, 4 in Joe Haven. A new graphic novel by Cree author David A. Robertson uses science fiction to explore colonialism, mental health, and healing from trauma. Titled God Flare, it follows a superhero fighting a nefarious lab performing experiments on Indigenous peoples in Winnipeg. It's the third book in a four-part series called Reckoner Rises. Reporter Sierra Benton sat down with Robertson to learn more about the book.
Dave Robertson, I'm an author. I also run a imprint with Penguin Random House Canada, an Indigenous-run imprint. This trilogy has been going on for the last several years now, and this is the third book in a planned book series of 4. And so Godflare is like the second last, and it's just this horror-inspired, almost like lead up to this big superhero, supervillain showdown. There's a lot of things in here that we can track back to residential school history. You know, they're experimenting on Indigenous children. They pick and select Indigenous people to imbue with these powers, to use them for their own gains, and so that is very much speaks to colonialism and the kind of the spirit of colonialism in the history of this country.
I understand that you've written 32 books, but you've kind of written everything from memoirs to now graphic novels. But I was curious to know what drew you to graphic novels.
Yeah, it's been fun with my career to do a whole wide variety of different forms and genres of literature. Graphic novels is where I started. There's always been a lack of Indigenous representation in comics in particular, and if we do have characters who are Indigenous in comics, they've always been very stereotyped, and that can be very damaging for children in particular, because children are very impressionable. So I wanted to start this series as a way to better represent Indigenous people in the area of like superhero comics.
So this series features an Indigenous superhero. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about the character development and how you sort of went about creating that character.
Cole is someone who has these superpowers that he's trying to learn how to be a superhero. He's trying to accept the fact that he can be a superhero. And one of the tropes of the superhero genre that I love is this idea that every superhero has a weakness. So, Superman has kryptonite, for example. And some of the character development for Cole is that he sees his weakness as mental health, anxiety and panic disorder, but his journey is really to learn that that is not a weakness in his life. It actually is part of what makes him who he is, and it makes him a better hero.
Why do you think graphic novels are a good medium to tell Indigenous stories?
Using the form of comics is taking advantage of a form that has historically been great to read and learn from for everybody. It's like we're visual learners as people, and we used to communicate through pictures before we even had words. So it's a very ancient form of communication. At the same time, it's a vessel for us to share our stories as Indigenous storytellers, and that's why you see so many Indigenous writers using the form of comics.
Godflare was released on September 3rd and can be purchased online and at bookstores across Canada. Sierra Bettons, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Looks fantastic. Congrats on the new book, David. He's been cranking them out in recent years and getting a lot of much-deserved acclaim. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, though, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. That's where you'll find an episode of Face to Face we did with David A. Robertson just a couple of years ago. And be sure to join us back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That's when Creason will have your first look at the day's news. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Stick around for an encore presentation of Face to Face. Our guest is Michael Hutchinson, the original host of Face to Face, who is now an author himself. That's next.